It's series 9 of the Dig podcast. And this is a very exciting series because the business clinic is back. And we bring the business clinic to you once in a while when we feel we really need that actionable advice from experts in lots of different fields. It's brought to you in partnership with Timely Careers, who are right behind us in that mission of bringing advice to people that they can actually put into practice and make changes in their lives and in their working lives as well. You can expect information on managing your finances, managing your relationships, so important, grabbing opportunity. We need to grab opportunity. There's no point in letting it pass us by. We'll only regret it. And also PR for your business. What is that and how do we make the most of it? So it's a really exciting podcast with some brilliant guests who want to help me and want to help you. So buckle up and get ready for the business clinic in partnership with Timely Careers.
We're speaking to Trish Hegarty. And Trish is the director of Inish Communications PR agency. And she's also an ex-BBC and Irish Times journalist. And I was doing some research on Trish because I did meet her face to face before our podcast, but I actually didn't know all of her background work and everything that she has done previous. So she actually founded her business in 2004. So 20 years in business this year.
20 years this year and celebrating.
I've read there's been lots of celebrations going on, but her client portfolio includes Donegal County Council, Fáilte Ireland. I've got them all written down here, not them all, but a few: Accountant Online, Foyle Port, B&B Ireland, Bounce Back Recycling, and many more SMEs. And her and her team specialise in PR for print, broadcast, and online media. And there's so much in that alone that we're going to chat about today. But this, as I said, has been a big year. 20 years is no mean feat and should be celebrating. But they have just been the first Donegal business PR agency, I should say, that has been shortlisted for a national PR award. So that is a big celebration for 20 years in business as well. Trish, I met you at the Awaken Hub All Ireland Female Founder Summit, and I'm very grateful for that opportunity to be there and meet people like you. Thank you for being on the Dig podcast.
It's an absolute privilege, and it was lovely to have met you at She Ventures Awaken Hub conference as well. So I'm delighted to be joining you today. It's great to be part of your podcast.
I know, and it just shows you the way people kind of like sliding doors. You could meet, you mightn't meet, but I was actually getting ready to leave and it was really warm that day. I remember at the Awaken Hub and you were sitting down by the water and I went down there to get a nice photo, happened to chat to you, and then it turned out you're like a PR guru that knows everything from in the Donegal area and all over the world. You've clients. So it was great to chat and then connect, and now you be here. So Trish, the Dig podcast audience are people in the world of work and people who work for people, business people, entrepreneurs, people of all kinds, all walks of life, but they want to know actionable advice on how to do things. And you're the woman I know because we just had a brief chat and you shared so much with me. So we're going to strip it right back today about PR, because right back to the basics, Trish, what is PR?
But to put it in the most simple way, it really is about promoting your business or your organization or your body or your project or your promotion. That's what it really is about. It's about communicating. It stands for public relations. So it's about communicating publicly, creating relationships which help you promote your business and your key messages, your products or your services. And it differs from advertising in that you're not buying space. It's organic. So you're using news releases within the media, features and interviews within the media. You're harnessing your own social media and website content, but you're not buying paid advertising space. So that's the biggest difference that's how PR is different from most other forms of marketing, if that makes sense. It's authentic and it's organic. That may not sound important to you, but without even thinking about it, if you're looking at something on the TV and there's an ad and there's something that's in the news, you know which one you're going to believe more, because without consciously thinking of it, the advertising space is paid for and they've paid for all of those words. Likewise, if you're reading something online in an online newspaper, if you're looking at the paid ads, you will be a little bit. The news content, the organic content will have a bigger impact on you than the advertising content, because again, that somebody is paid for that space. So there's a lot more credibility in the stuff that's generated by PR.
such a good way of it. And no one's ever explained that like that before now to me. So that's really interesting way to look at it. And my next part that I was going to ask you is why, and you kind of touched on it there, why is it so important for businesses then to be embracing PR?
I think one of the problems is when you're doing business courses and people look at marketing, there is a tendency sometimes for people to forget about PR. Now, don't get me wrong, other forms of marketing all have a role to play. So if you're doing, if you're doing a start your own business course, or if you're going to business conference or events, marketing is always there in the mix. People will always talk about marketing and your finances and your sales and all those. And marketing can be, advertising, it can be your website, it can be Google ads, it can be Facebook ads, it can be all of those things. But I think that PR is an important part of that mix because of that authenticity. And also it can allow you to tell your story in a lot more detail. So say, for example, a typical PR campaign might involve, the creation of your own news release. You're writing, you're telling your story, you're creating a strong news hook that the media are going to want to cover something for you, whether you're launching something or you're just announcing a new development or something major within your business. So you can use something like a news release. You can try to get interviews on radio or TV stations. You can try to get interviews in magazines or newspapers, and that can be quite a lot of space. It gives you a chance to tell your story in a lot more detail. It lets people know about you, about your company, about your brand, about your products or your services. And it gives people an opportunity to relate to you because there'll be something of you in that story. You'll be talking in it too. Your voice will be in there. So it's harder to do all that in advertising. It's not impossible because we use social media. A lot of us do reels or, little videos, our own pieces to camera. So nowadays we're using social media to tell our own story in a way that only PR probably would have done in the past. So there are blurred lines. Social media crosses the line between PR and marketing. But I think PR should be part of your marketing mix. And also you have to remember that advertising can be very expensive. It can be very effective, but it can be very expensive. And sometimes you should be exploring PR to see if it can be a more effective way of reaching larger audiences.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
So you might spend, you might spend, 10,000 euro on advertising and reach just a very specific target audience. You know that before you've paid your ads, the advertisers will be telling you what the size of their reach is, but you might reach an audience multiples of that size for the same spend with PR.
Okay, this is really going to be opening people's minds now that would have never thought about this. So if you can share with the listeners and me, what are the different types of PR? Right.
Well, traditionally, and we're talking about before the age of the digital revolution, it was really just all mainly about the media. So you would have been looking at using local media, national media, specialist media within your sector. You'd have been looking at print media, newspapers, magazines. You'd have been looking at radio stations, local and national TV stations. You'd have been looking at all of those, both in all sorts of ways, building relationships with the media, pitching stories, doing interviews, doing features, and issuing news releases or running media campaigns. All of that. Another thing that would have been part of the mix probably is networking, and then building relationships in the community, building a relationships with key stakeholders or what we would call nowadays influencers, very important people. But nowadays, for us, if we have a new client, or any client that we're working with, when we start, we're not just looking at a media campaign. We're looking at their website content, all of the website, all of their digital content, and we're looking at their social media as well. So typically, for a new client, redoing the website might be one of the first steps that we take. So we would be involved in helping them, say, create a brief for redeveloping their website. We'll help them look at it and say, look, here are other websites in your field. Some of these are doing this better than you're doing it. there are all these things here that aren't on your site that you're doing that you should be telling people about. You need a new website. So what does your new website need? It needs to look like this. It needs to have these functions. It needs to have this sort of a feel about your branding. It needs to, you need to have Google Analytics so you can monitor your traffic better. You need e-commerce, you need all of these things, and we'll help them create a brief. We'll help them get quotes from website developers, and then we might help them rewrite all their website content and edit it, or maybe help them set up a blog. We'll look at their social media. We'll analyze, are they on the right platforms for them? For example, with all the changes in Twitter, even before Elon Musk bought it over, it was harder and harder to grow your audience. And yet it is still quite an important platform for reaching out to the media because a lot of journalists are on it. Facebook, still important, not so great for business to business. Insta, obviously, has been growing rapidly in the last 4 or 5 years, particularly if you want to target a younger audience. So you're having to look at all of those things and make them part of your mix. So you're looking at your media plan, your website content, and your social media. And if, for example, we're running a media campaign for somebody, that will run across social media too. So say, for example, we're managing a launch for you, or an announcement about your business. You're about to launch a new podcast series. So we may send a news release out to the local media, but we'll also start rolling that out on your own social media. We'll be saying, oh, listen in, Caroline is going to be on Q102 at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, and then we'll play back a link to the interview when it's over. And there are all sorts of ways you're going to cross over between your social media and your mainstream media and then your website. If you're doing a news release, you'll stick it up on your blog, So they're all connected. You can't really separate them, and you shouldn't nowadays. It needs to be, for us, the most important thing is being strategic right from the very start. So you should have your own PR strategy, and it should be part of your marketing strategy.
So I think a lot of people are going to be thinking about all their missed opportunities after listening to that, because lots of people are doing great things. As you know, people work so hard, and are they shouting about it across all the channels? Maybe they shared it once, maybe they were in the paper and didn't do all those things you just said to actually maximize the reach. Yeah. Would you say to people that there's an opportunity to go back on maybe some of the great work they've done to try to like reshare, or can we touch back on things now if people are thinking, oh, I missed doing that? Or
well, one very simple way you can do it is if you set up a media, if you're the sort of person that's getting quite a bit of media coverage or doing quite a bit of interviews, no matter what the platform you're doing them on, you can set up a media section on your website. So all of your, a lot of our clients would have a media section on the website. So it would be, in a lot of cases, it'll be divided up. So all of the news releases will go on it. So if I'm a journalist and you've sent me a news release today, I can look back at all your old ones. You can put all your all of the media coverage you've had. You can put it up. So you can have your news releases, you can have your in the news or media coverage, and it's all there. And then any audio or video interviews you've done, they can all go up separately as well. So anybody can go in and see all of those things that you've done by just going into your website. And obviously, the other thing about PR is the whole thing of a news hook is very, very important. I'm saying there's one of the key differences is between PR and advertising, and that advertising, you pay for your space, you pay for the words, you tell them what to put in, and everybody knows that, but you're guaranteed that space. In some PR campaigns, you're not guaranteed success. The media don't have to cover a news release you send out, so it has to be good. And, as you mentioned, I'm a former BBC and Irish Times journalist, so I spent lots of years at the receiving end of both good PR and bad PR. And, the amount of bad news releases or bad PR campaigns that you were in contact with was unreal. So I know, and also because I've worked as not just a journalist, but a presenter and a producer within the BBC. So I know what's going to make the news agenda, what needs to be a strong news, what is a good story, So you've got to factor all those things into account. You're not just, nobody's going to hand you the media coverage. You have to know, you have to have your finger on the pulse. You have to know what's going to work.
Sorry, I was so excited there. I tried to jump in to ask any tips on what does make a good hook, or what does grab the attention of BBC journalists or any kind of journalists? Give us any wee clues.
Well, I mean, there's all sorts of things. If you're doing something new that nobody has done before, that's absolutely great. If you're doing something which is going to potentially create new jobs, whether it's straight away or over the next 3, 4, 5 years, that if you've got a breakthrough in your field, if you've had, if your company has grown by, 30 or 50%, if what your company is doing has an impact on others. So say, for example, I'm just going to pick one example. So say, for example, you're an accountancy firm and you found a new way of doing things online, which has happened in the past, that is going to save time for business owners, or going to revolutionize the way they do their accounts. Something like that is going to be newsworthy. All of those things can be newsworthy. And then don't forget there's seasonal things too. So if you're doing something that's related to Valentine's Day or Christmas, you may not have to have such strict criteria. You can just ride on that little wave, that little seasonal wave. So again, planning in advance to do that. But so if you've got something seasonal, that can be something that would capture their attention. There are all sorts of things. And I think sometimes, particularly women business owners, we underestimate ourselves and maybe undervalue what it is that we do. And what is unique or individual is going to be the thing that attracts the most attention, and what is new. And one mistake to avoid is something that happened last month. If it happened last month, it's not new. I've had there's people coming to me and say, well, we got an award last month, and I'm thinking, yeah, that was in the papers, those awards. And you want me to go to the media now? The media is just going to dump that straight in the bin. So people can, you do need to be, I would be honest with somebody if they're coming to me with something which is really not a news story. But I would have to say that a lot more times I'm talking to a client or a potential client and they tell me something and I'm going, wow, I didn't know that. I've never heard that before. So if you're telling them something they probably don't know, that's a real good one too. But chat, I think you need to talk to somebody who has an outside perspective. When you spend all that time working in your business, I mean, I know it's a cliche, you can't see the wood for the trees, but sometimes you can't see what is right in front of you and another person will.
Okay, so there's loads there. And one of the things that I'm thinking is, right, if I've got the hook and I'm doing deadly things and I'm ready to tell everybody, you mentioned Twitter. Is that the best place to get this message to journalists? How do we actually then get that to the right people? Obviously, we can hire a PR agency like yourself. So I'm thinking of all the different ways that we can get. So we could hire someone like you, or is there another alternative?
If journalists aren't following you on Twitter and you post about something on Twitter, unless lots of other people whom journalists do follow share it, they're not going to see it. However, if something goes viral or it starts to trend, that's a great way to get media attention. If you've got something which takes off on social media, sometimes the media will come after you. And where you might have pushed something and got nowhere, once everybody else starts to sit up and take notice, then they will take notice. You can also just pitch stories, because I've talked about a news hook, but there are also features that don't need a strong news hook. If you're doing something different with your podcast, or you're doing a specific series and there's something in particular that you're asked for and there's a lot of demand or there's a lot of response to it, I might decide as a features editor, look, I really like this woman, I really like what she's doing. I'm going to do just a personal interest piece on her. There are all sorts of ways to pitch for features or interviews where you can sort of sidestep the strict news hook criteria, if that makes sense. So it can be something new you're doing, something different you're doing, just about you personally and your story, maybe challenges that you've overcome in your life or your career, or the fact that you seem to have noticed an issue that other people haven't noticed, or you've found a solution to a problem that other people haven't solved, or you've found a much more cost-effective way of doing something. These are all things that you could pitch as a feature or an interview. Having said that, you do your research first. So there's not much point in killing yourself to find a story that you think is going to make the front page of the Irish Times or the Irish News if your audience is somewhere else. If you're targeting the hospitality sector, what you should be looking for is the hospitality sector media. So identify where your audience is first. If it's a general consumer, then you want as much mainstream media as possible. If it's a specific sector, then go after the trade media in that sector, and it's much easier to get that. But then look at those media and see who are the journalists that you like reading that may be interested in your story, and try and form a relationship with them. Maybe just pitch to one person first and say, look, I like your stuff. I've been reading your thing. You might be interested in this. I noticed that you do a lot of these types of interviews. You know, I would love to talk to you, or would you be interested in XYZ, you know?
You wanting to return to work, but you're feeling stressed about all the challenges you're going to face to make that journey happen? Well, then that's where you need the help of Timely Careers. Timely Careers was created by the WIB Group, and it is a coaching, skills, training and jobs platform that helps support women back into the world of work in a way that suits their lives. Timely Careers understands the importance of flexible working, and they want to support you on your journey. They can help upskill you in an area that you want to perhaps dive into. They can help with interview training, help you update your CV, help you explore the opportunities that are available out there for you. With job posts across all sectors and roles across all levels, Timely Careers can connect you with an employer who will offer you the flexible working that can help you get back into the world of work. To find out more, check out timelycareers.com.
So you can do stuff yourself by pitching, but you need to be careful. But it's like a sales cold call. You need to make it warm. So knowing a bit about the journalist, about what they do first, so that when you do contact them, they don't feel they understand. Well, you're showing them that you understand what they're about. They're a lot more likely to respond more positively then.
Yeah, it's like social skills in general there, rather than just like it taking all the time. You want to build that relationship.
I think the thing is, they don't owe you anything.
No.
So you've got to be giving them something of interest to them. And if you know a little bit about them, you know what's of interest to them. You know, so say, for example, there might be a journalist who's very, very interested in women in business, and particularly women who are doing something new. And you're going to say to her, look, I loved your feature last week on such and such, on that new women's business. My name's so-and-so, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. And what it's doing is, you know, it's changing the whole world of such and such. Would you be interested in talking to me? You know, or I have an idea for the feature. This is an issue, this is a problem. We've done our research, you know, 1 in every 10 women doesn't trust or has 1 in every 10 women needs help with their personal finances. We're offering a special package or a special service, and they don't feel that they're getting it anywhere else. If you have research or statistics or a survey or something to back up what you're doing, and it doesn't need to be a national in-depth, you know, it can be a fairly simple survey. Anything at all like that, insights, new information, revelations, solutions.
Okay, I love that. Now, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, I wouldn't even know how to navigate that, but I do have some great, I have got great things happening in my business. What type of budget are you looking at for businesses to actually work with a PR agency? I know that's probably like a long piece of string, but can you give us any idea? Is it affordable for small businesses? Is there any?
It really depends on what you want to do. There's a couple of ways of doing it. So a lot of our clients would be year-round clients, and they would pay a retainer. So depending on how much of your time they want a month, you could be depending whether you're picking an agency in Dublin or Belfast or in the regions, because obviously rents and salaries are dearer in Dublin and Belfast than in a lot of the regions. So you're going to be paying a lot more. I mean, so you could be paying anywhere from 1,000 a month depending on what you want covered, how many PR days you want. Do you want them to manage your social media? Do you want more than that? If you're a very new business, you may want to just have a chat with somebody first and say, look, I'm not going to have $1,000 a month. I would like help with this or this or this. Is there anything you can do to help me? And also a lot of, when, for example, we would often charge less for somebody who's in a really difficult position starting out. A lot of other agencies would be very sympathetic to that too. And then there's another way to look at it. So say, for example, you are planning a launch or a specific project or a specific program, and you might have allocated a certain amount for your marketing. Maybe look at allocating some of that to PR. So say, for example, your budget, you've got all of it on advertising. You've got some on Facebook ads, some on Google ads, some on, print advertising or whatever it is. Look at, should you allocate some of that to PR? And if you have a budget, then what you can do is you can go to several agencies and say, look, this is what I want to do. This is the budget. What can you do for me for this money? That's the other way of doing it, which very much puts you in the driving seat. Does that make sense?
I think that when you say PR, now excuse me to the listeners if I'm the only one that thinks like this, but I have heard other people say, sometimes you think, oh, I wouldn't be able, I'm not big enough to have PR for my business, or I couldn't afford that. But for you to say it like that, it makes it more achievable for businesses, I think, to think, right, well, I could do something like that for my next campaign or my next launch or whatever it may be. So I think that explains it really well. Thank you, Trish.
What I would advise, particularly for a business that wants to grow, I mean, for example, Larissa Feeney's business, Accountant Online, we worked together in her early years, just when she launched what at that time was Ireland's first online accountancy service. Not product, but actual, she provided all the services online, which pre-COVID was extremely innovative. She was the first one to do it. So we worked with her on PR to help her grow her audiences, revamp her website, do all sorts of other things. But when she grew big enough, she was able to have her own in-house expertise. So I think that's really where, if you're a growing business, and when you're small and you don't want to put too many people on staff until you can afford to pay them, and you're probably going to have to outsource your expertise. But when you're bigger, then you can have in-house expertise. So you might have your own marketing or communications person, and even if they don't have a PR background, like somebody like myself would have, you can train them. They can have experience, but also you can get them training. Like we would do training, we would do in-house training for people. So that's a great longer term solution. But until you get there, yes, I think it is important to throw PR into the marketing mix. I think it is important to consider it. It may well be that for whatever you're doing, I mean, PR isn't about the hard sell. So if you want only a hard sell campaign, maybe, it's buying advertising space will secure exactly what you want. But in most cases, I think you don't want to only hard sell, because if you only hard sell, you're just pushing a message out. You're not listening to what's coming in. And I think that's one of the things about PR, and how social media in particular plays a big part in PR is you're listening to what people are saying and you're engaging with other people. So if we're managing somebody's social media account, we're not just pushing out posts. We're looking at the comments and the reactions. We're sharing stuff that other people are posting. We're engaging online with other people who are potential customers of theirs or stakeholders or influencers. So it's a sort of a two-way thing, and it's not just a sell. So like, I hope I'm not digressing too much here, but for example, if we're planning somebody's social media content, we're going to say that on Twitter, for example, only a fifth of your messages should be selling messages. You should also be talking about, so say Bounce Back Recycling, our recycling agent, our agency that is a client of ours in Galway. So there'll be so many messages will be about their services when they're next doing a collection route, but there'll also be messages about them as a business. There'll be messages about social enterprise. There'll be messages about recycling. There'll be all sorts of things in there. So it's not just hard sell. So people can relate to them in all sorts of other ways, and not just in relation to the product. Yes, the product and the service is really important, but there's lots of other things. And So I think PR is very, very useful for that. It's more human, you know, it's more human, more organic, more authentic in that way. Does
Yeah,
that
and
make sense?
yes, absolutely. I totally get that. And I think sometimes that's where businesses can get overwhelmed because that's a skill, like a storytelling, interactive, like engaging. So that's why people do work with other agencies, as you said, and go outside there. Because if you're an accountant or a solicitor or a hairdresser or whatever it may be, your skill doesn't lie sometimes in all of those things you just talked about. So that's when it can get very frazzling for businesses, as you well know, because you just think, I just can't do this. This is not my job. And then we thankfully meet people like Trish.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, is that people can miss opportunities because they in some cases they do know exactly the value of what they're doing, but they're so busy doing it, they don't have time to talk about it. And I mean, that happens to me too. You know, I mean, we're having a sort of a year, rolled out slow year of celebration of the 20 years because so I'll be doing a couple of webinars and seminars here and there over the year. But you can be so busy and just doing what it is that you don't have time to do that, and you can be missing opportunities. It's for me, what's most important for me is providing a PR service that is value for money. So we would analyze at the end of every month how much coverage we've got for somebody, measure the size of the audience, measure the value of the coverage they've got, and it's going to be multiples. They might have spent in a month, they might have spent, you know, 1,500, and they might have got 36,000 worth of coverage. So it is generating huge value for money, you know, absolutely huge value for money, and reaching big audience sizes. And if it's not doing that, then there's something wrong, you know, there's something wrong.
And you know,
that's the way we would look at it, you know.
Yeah,
and the other thing is last year we launched what appears to be, in the English-speaking world at least, the first ever online PR toolkit. So the idea of it was to make PR more accessible for people on stricter budgets. And I'll tell you how it came about. During COVID, when the lockdown first happened, I thought, fine, everything's going to slow down. That's okay. I'll work part-time. I'll learn to bake bread. I'll learn to do all those things I've never had time to do. And the opposite happened. It was flat out because everybody who didn't have a good website or didn't have a good online presence all of a sudden needed to do all that. I'm in the mentor panel for the local enterprise office in Donegal. And within that first year of COVID, I mentored over 30 businesses. Now, some of them got 1 or 2 or 3 days mentoring. Some of them got 6 hours. And their need was massive. So it was nearly like a production line. I was trying to do as much as possible for these small businesses who were getting this mentoring for free, and they weren't going to be able to have any time after that. And they had very limited budgets. So I was looking at, first of all, your PR strategy, then your action plan, review your website, look at your social media, draft a social media campaign, you know, look at your online content, creating an online content map. And then I realized at the end of the year that I had all these tools. So I got a bit of funding for a phase 1 and then a phase 2, integrated them into the site, and then launched them. So you can buy at a transparently priced cost, you can buy a PR strategy, you can buy an action plan, you can buy a content map, etc., etc., etc. And the idea is to it's transparent, because yes, people can be concerned about the cost of PR because they're afraid. All of us are afraid of professional fees, that you turn around and all of a sudden you get a bill for $5,000 and go, where did that come from? How did that happen? But so it's I'm going to be continuously working on it. I'll be reviewing it again and trying to keep it more and more up to date, and to make it effective and cost effective, you know. So the world, you know, the world of PR will change. It is changing, you know, it is changing.
And you mentioned there, you mentioned it a lot throughout our conversation, and something that I think businesses neglect a lot, because I see it as well when I'm doing mentoring, their website. You keep mentioning website. How important is that, Trish?
Vital. I mentioned earlier that if we're taking on a new client, one of the first things we'll be doing is, and then I would have to say in probably 80% of cases, it's a redevelopment of their website. You know, that's in I would say easily 80% of cases they need to redevelop their website, because you know as well as I do that the days where you put your website up and leave it are gone, just completely, totally and utterly gone. You need to be constantly changing your website. And I think you do need an outside perspective, and you need somebody who's going to be straight with you and say, look, that's, you don't have to be rude and say that's absolutely woeful, but you do need to say, look, this is what your website needs to do, and it's not doing that, you know. It needs to be mobile friendly, you know. It needs to be very, very easy to read. The text needs to be written in bite-sized chunks, not weighed down with huge long paragraphs. It needs to be written in a style that's easy for people to understand. It needs to have lots of images. It needs good graphics. It needs to have a really nice design. You need e-commerce that's easy to use. You need all of these sort of things, you know, and it needs to be better than others in your field, you know, and it needs to look up to date. It doesn't need to look like it hasn't been touched in 10 years. And it also needs to be safe and secure. I mean, you know yourself, you go to a website and it says, you know, you get a red warning, you're not going back there. You're not going back. So you've lost an opportunity to create a relationship with somebody if your website isn't even safe, you know.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have neglected their, and I suppose, like you said, building your website and leaving it, you might as well not have done it, because it needs to be, I don't know what the rule of thumb is, but I used to have a shop, and it was a retail kids clothes shop, and I changed my window every 2 weeks. And I always used that as an example to my people when I was mentoring them. Well, if I wanted to engage the person driving by every 2 weeks with new products, that's the exact same way I treat my website. Every 2 weeks, a new banner, every 2 weeks, a new, and that's how I managed it me anyway. And I use that as an example. So I think maybe people need to pay more attention to their own PR of their own brand.
I think you've nailed it there when you say your shop front. Your website is your shop front. Yeah. Most people are interacting with your business through your website, not through the phone and not through email, through your website. You're getting far more traffic on your website than you are by email or phone or face-to-face contact. So it is your shop front, and it needs to be you need to be putting your best foot forward. And yes, people can say, oh, I don't have time. Oh, we don't get much business through our website. If you have e-commerce, you may not be getting the sales directly through your website, but you can be sure that anybody checks your website, you know, before they come near you.
Absolutely. What is the future of PR, do you think, Trish? Look how things have changed from what you would have done, you know, years ago, 20 years ago when you started your business to now. What is the future? Does it excite you? Does it scare you?
I think the fundamentals are really not going to change. There's still going to be that difference between authentic and organic and the paid advertising. But I think some of the lines are blurring a little. Obviously, the use of AI is changing things. People are using AI to create social media posts, which I would consider part of PR. When you're not talking about ad posts, people are using AI to create news releases or to create website content. And sometimes that works. But for me, for now, I can spot on AI a piece of my love, because it's often that little bit over the top, that little bit over enthusiastic in the way that it uses language. It's not necessarily using language in a particularly if you're in Ireland, not using language in a way an Irish person would. Now, that is going to change. AI text will get better and better, but at the end of the day, it's only going to be as good as to what you put in. So if I write something and I get an AI to rewrite it, if I don't put in the right ingredients, it's not going to give me them back, no matter how articulately it does it, no matter how well it does it. It may improve I might have terrible writing skills. It may be well written, but it may not have the key points that are going to attract the attention of a journalist. If you don't have any media background, if you don't understand news hooks, if you don't understand what is going to make a journalist respond, I'm not sure that your AI news release is really going to do that job. You know, if does that make sense?
Yeah.
So say, for example, I'm just trying to think of. I'll go back to my bounce back recycling. So they're about to launch a new mattress collection service in Donegal. And somebody writes a news release, and we're bounce back recycling. We do this, we do that. We've been in existence for so many years. We do this, blah, blah, blah. We recycle mattress, blah, blah, blah. And then in the final paragraph, and we're launching a new service in Donegal. So the Donegal bit should be right up at the top. it should say, you know, so say I don't put in exactly how many customers we plan to serve. I don't put in how much money it could save people. I could be missing key selling messages in that point. I could be missing key news hooks, and the AI is not going to find them if I haven't told it. So you will always need a human element, and you'll also, no matter how good your news releases are, if you're not sending them to the right journalists, if you're not sending them at the right time, if you don't have the media contacts, a human needs to do that, and a human needs to have the relationships with the media. Like, for example, I was a journalist for 14 years. I've run my own PR business for 20 years. So I have a massive network of contacts that I've built up right as a professional journalist and as a professional PR person. So they're personal relationships that I've built up. So I know a lot of these people, you know, I can pick up the phone and talk to them. AI is not going to do that. You may be able to buy a list of media contacts, but if you don't have a relationship with them, you have a reduced chance of getting through, because they get tons of stuff every day. Absolutely tons of stuff, you know. So yes, I think you're always going to need the human element.
Thank God for that.
Yes.
And yes, the future is exciting, and it can be scary for some people, as I said, because it feels so overwhelmed. But there are great people doing great work like yourself and lots of other PR agencies. And actually, recently I had a podcast interview with the First Minister here in the North, Michelle O'Neill. So Michelle agreed to be on the podcast, and I was like, thought this was just the best thing ever, and it was, and it is, and as in to speak to someone that's leading us, it was a great opportunity. So I, however, have been in situations in the past, Trish, where I've had opportunities and nothing's ever came out of it because of my mindset not embracing other things I need to do. So I thought, right, I could have an interview with Michelle and it could be great. And, you know, there'll be people listening to it on the podcast, but will it really have a ripple effect? Will it really reach the people I wanted to reach if I don't have a strategy here? So this is supposed an example of what I did recently that worked. So I have a friend who owns a PR company, Fiona Brown Communications in Belfast. I don't know if you know Fiona, Trish. Fiona Brown.
No.
So I said to her, look, could I employ your services on this one piece? I don't have loads of money, but this is a very important piece for me. And I want to make sure it gets out in the right way to the media. I don't know what they want to hear or what they want. So actually, there was a piece in it where Michelle talked about being a grandmother and how she loves spending time with her grandchildren or grandchild, and she loves that connection with family. And I would never really have pulled that out of the podcast. But Fiona knew what the media wanted, and she created a press release with that as the tagline, and that went out and it went all over the media.
There you go.
Now, I would never have done that. I wouldn't have known. I would have been thinking they would have been wanting to know about what she was going to do for business people or what she was going to do. But actually, no, Fiona knew, because she's like you, knows what the media wants, knows their. So that was a really good way that I spent my money on PR for that piece. So I suppose if people are listening and they're trying.
That's good PR. That's somebody who had her finger on the pulse. She knows that there's probably been lots of coverage of what Michelle has said she's going to do for business. She knows it's probably not new, whereas this was an insight that other people may not have had, that you secured in your interview. But it's fabulous. It's fabulous to have it. I mean, it's amazing that they're the two women political leaders, First Minister and Deputy First Minister in the North, are both women. It's quite incredible.
It is, and women like that, to give women like me a chance to speak to them, you know, like, it just shows you our changed world, thank God. But Trish, the Dig podcast is sponsored for this business clinic by Timely Careers, and it's
before we get to that, you'd mentioned something to me about advice for somebody if they were having a launch. Do you mind if I jump into that? Just
I know I didn't want to bring you back over things that you'd already talked about, but if there's extra tips for people on if they're
just a few tips.
Taking a break in the middle of the podcast just for a little second to ask for your help. Over the past 9 series, I've been overwhelmed by your support. There's so many of you listening, thousands and thousands every month listening to the actionable advice, but still some people haven't subscribed or followed on the channel that they're listening. So if you're listening to this and you think that's me, I haven't done that, it would be brilliant if you could just take a second and hit follow on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or if you hit the subscribe button on YouTube. It means that the Dig podcast can keep growing and can keep getting great guests on that can actually help change our lives. Thank you, and let's get back to the business clinic.
Sometimes people forget about these. I think the most important one, if you're planning a launch or a huge event of some kind, the number one first thing is to start planning 2 months in advance at least. What I find often happens is we'll get a call from somebody, we're launching something next week, and I feel like going, are you serious? Are you serious? So you need to start planning in advance, way in advance. You've got to figure out, are you doing it online or a face-to-face event? Are you doing a news release, or are you calling a press conference? Try and think what your media plan is. Are you advertising on it? Are you having a little social media campaign in the run up to it? Are you having little teasers? All of those sort of things. And create a step-by-step plan with tasks along a calendar and break them all down. The news release needs to be drafted by this stage. It needs to be finalised and approved by this stage. We need to send, if we're holding an event, we need to send a diary notice out in advance to the media so that they've got it on their calendar, and tell them that we'll be sending a news release out on such and such a date. Do we need to send invitations to them to come? Do we need to send invitations to important people or speakers that we want to come? Then when are we going to send out invitations to other people that we may want to attend, whether it's an online or face-to-face event? And the other thing I would say, so planning is the most important thing. Second most important thing is to be creative. Look at doing something different. I mean, because we're talking mainly here about women in business. You definitely want to avoid the whole men in suits look. So having a little bit of, diversity, difference, a fresh look and feel to your event, but trying to think of creative ideas that aren't too gimmicky. Spend a bit of time brainstorming, take time out of a busy day to do that. And then the other thing that people fall down on so often is photography. You can pay almost as much for bad photography as you can pay for good photography. That's the number one thing. And believe me, I've seen it. Make sure that you get a really good photographer. No matter how tight your budget is, money spent on photography will last you for years. A good photo shoot will last you for years. You'll get value out of it on your website and your social media and your PR for absolute years. So make sure you get a good photographer. And that isn't just somebody who's good at taking wedding photographs or portraits. Have a look at what they do for business PR, for commercial PR. Have a look at their website, see what their photographs are, look at other campaigns they've been involved in, make sure their stuff is good enough for you, get quotes, write a brief. This is what you want for your photographs, whether it's in advance or on the day. But if you don't have photographs to send out with your PR, you have a much less chance of getting it covered. If you have good quality photographs, you massively increase your chances of getting media coverage, because the media don't have as many full-time photographers as they used to. They don't like to spend money on photography. So if you're providing that, it's a massive boost. If you have a really good, strong image, they're much more likely to want it in their publication. So that would be my top tips.
Such good advice. The planning ahead thing, I laughed there when you said I'm launching something next week. How many people who are listening have done that so many times? And I guess that's the busy world of being a business owner. But when you're serious about a PR strategy or any kind of social strategy, even, you need to be, like you said, your tick list and your all of that, and your planning is key, isn't it? You
won't necessarily be spending any more time on it, but you'll have time to do the jobs without giving yourself a nervous breakdown. Going, oh my God, I've got 1 week. Oh my God, I get through all this stuff. If you spread it out over 2 months, yes, you can.
I know. So I suppose I'm thinking of my retail head on. I was always a season ahead because you're always planning the season. Always trained me that, but a lot of people don't think that way. So it's great to highlight that. Did you cover all your tips? I don't want to skip on if that was all. I'm sure.
No, they're the main things. I mean, planning is the main thing, but the photography, that's in general for all PR. I would recommend good photography. I've seen people paying somebody that they know who's a relation, and photographs with holes sticking out the top of people's heads or out the side of their ears. And I'm thinking, I can't even send these out because they are so bad.
And I would add to that videography as well. Because a lot of my work's on social as well as yours, but sometimes the people are taking the videos and are not trained right either on the way to hold the camera, the way to move through the crowd and all of that. So much to think about. And this is only a little brainstorming that me and you are doing on this podcast. I really appreciate sharing those tips because it'll get everybody thinking. Trisha, I did start to tell you there about Trish Timely Careers. So it's set up by the WIB group. So most people would know, like, Women in Business here in the North. And it's to help women. It's a free resource. It's brilliant. It's to help women return to work. Maybe they've taken time off to have children. They've taken time off to be a carer. And getting back into the workplace can be daunting. Have you any advice for women that may be listening to this? I know there's loads of men listening too, but we want to support women because they're mostly in the caregiving role. Have you any advice for women who have a time out?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would say is it's a cliche, but you only have one life. You have taken time out of your career, in many cases, for caring responsibilities, which are really, really important. And I think when you step out of the world of the work, your confidence can take a bit of a hammering then when you try to step back in again. So I would for a start, I would accept that and say, okay, my confidence might be a wee bit rattled. I need to have support, to boost my confidence, but also use it as an opportunity to do what you really, really want to do. Take a step back and say, well, was I doing what I really, really wanted to do? If you were, grand, go back for that. If you weren't, think, what could I do now to get me back, to get me to a place where I could do what I really, really want to do? It could be that you are working somewhere where you think you could do it better than them, so you might want to set up your own business. It could be that you have a new idea that you want to launch. It could be that you want to retrain, or you want to go into a new field. And I think what you should do is go for support. Use organizations like Women in Business or Awaken Hub. Find good mentors who will inspire you and who will guide you and give you practical advice. Absolutely do that. I mean, I've had 3 careers. My first career was a student leader. I was after I went to Queen's. I finished school in the North and went to Queen's. I was welfare officer, VP for welfare there for a year, and then I was deputy president of the Union of Students in Ireland. And then my claim to fame is I was the first woman president of the Union of Students in Ireland. So I spent 4 years as a full-time student representative, and that inspired me to go into journalism because I understood the role of the media. And then as a journalist, I found when I had my second child that my health suffered badly. Trying to work shifts in a very busy newsroom just really, really found it tough. And setting up my own business allowed me, there was nobody else doing PR in the Northwest at that time, but it gave me more flexibility around my family responsibilities. Yes, think about the thing about setting up your own business. It can give you some flexibility, but you do have a lot of responsibility. And then the other thing is flexible working options. Obviously, things have changed radically, not in every field for women. There are still women who find it extremely hard. And I did struggle to try and not work anti-social shifts and things like that when I was with the BBC, but it was very, very challenging. And a lot of women find it challenging. I think nowadays the workplace can be more open. And also I think that there are a lot of sectors that are struggling to get employees, so you can be a lot more demanding, than you used to be.
I know. And is there anything, like, you have people working for you? Do you have any kind of flexible working policy?
I was on my own as a sole trader for years, and then when my boys finished school and started to move on, I decided to grow the business, and I've been doing that for the last 4 years. So I now have a team of 3. I had used the odd freelance work before that, but I'm growing enough that I have a team of 3. I plan to continue growing. I certainly might have occasional opportunities for freelance writers or freelance support. But I certainly do plan to grow my team in the future as I grow and as I grow my client base. But I would just say to somebody, just think about what you really, really want, and why not go for that? You can do it.
Love that. What a way to end the podcast, just to give people that inspiration and that fire in their belly. Trish, thank you so much. Like as I said at the start, I'm very grateful for the opportunity. Waking Hub, first of all, allowing me to be there that day, crossing your path on that lovely veranda as we looked out over the water, and you saying yes to me for being a guest. I don't take that for granted. You're from Greencastle. I love Greencastle. I love Inishowen. I love the people of Inishowen and Donegal. Something special up there, and you have it.
It's beautiful. I can literally, from my desk, I'm looking out at the sea. I can see Scotland from here on a good day.
Wow.
We haven't had too many of those good days, but yeah, no, I love it. I'm just outside Greencastle. I absolutely love it here. But I did live in Belfast for a long time. I finished school and went to college there. And it was just as much a pleasure for me to meet you, Caroline. It's an absolute pleasure to do this.
I know, I love doing things like this, and hopefully we get to meet again sometime soon, face to face. But for now, thank you for being a guest on the Dig podcast. And before I go, and I always ask people this, where can people now connect with you and find you, Trish? Where's the best place for them to do that?
On our website, inishcommunications.com, and there's no H in the Inish, it's just iniscommunications.com. You can find us online. We're on social media as well, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn, Trish Hegarty.
And I will link all of that in the show notes as well for people who are maybe out walking or running and they can't take that down. So thank you again for being a guest on the Dig podcast, the business clinic in partnership with Timely Careers.
Thanks a million, Caroline. Bye.